Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters in That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Today, welcome a special guest. You got Andres Herrera, aka Entropy in Motion. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Good. It's good to have you on YouTube. So I guess how you been recently? What's new?
I've been doing really well. As far as what's new, actually kind of taking a break from music at the moment. Started a new podcast that I'm not really saying anything about because I want to remain anonymous. So I've really been doing a lot of work on that and enjoying it. So it's been good.
Guess how many podcasts do you have all together?
I've got two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do another one called the Decibels Deep podcast, which is music reviews and just music history, different things like that. And I try to touch on more obscure bands or maybe lesser known, lesser liked albums because I usually like the ones that most people hate and hate the ones that most people like.
That's pretty cool. And you also sent over some links, I guess, some of the music that you do, as well as, I guess, a little playlist that you actually put together. So I guess that's
Mhm.
pretty cool. So is that actually part of like that whole music reviews that you do? And then you just put a nice little playlist on Spotify?
I did for a while, but I just didn't like doing that. It just seemed to really because I would post them on either one of my music projects on the artist playlist, and it just kind of brought confusion, so I stopped doing that.
Yeah, I don't think Spotify likes it when you do it either. So, oh well. So you live and learn. So that's all that matters.
Exactly.
Yep. So I guess which part of the world are you hailing from, actually?
I am from the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado, a place uh, that's really known for its paranormal activity. We're right in between NORAD and Los Alamos. So, yeah, we've got a lot going on. And I'm not far from, as the crow flies, not very far from Dulce Base, which carries its own aura of mystique and, um, conspiracy theories.
So, you're gonna say it's like Roswell, New Mexico, in a way, with like the aliens and crash landing. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I do. I've done a lot of study on that base because on Dulce base because it's something that fascinates me. Yeah, there's a lot there.
I guess what sort of paranormal activity are people kind of like talking about in your neck of the woods? And I guess these are parts of Colorado and New Mexico there.
The biggest one is the cattle mutilations around here. I think if we weren't one of the first documented ones, if we weren't the first, we were one of the first documented ones with a horse named Snippy. So there's a whole bunch of cattle mutilations and um, you know, um, stories of cryptids and aliens and all kind, the whole lot. It's all here.
I was like, this is what the Puritans thought was going on in Salem way back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez,
We're like Western Salem, I guess.
I guess in a way. So I was gonna say it's almost like some sort of satanic ritual, and then just taking all the organs, putting it down in the basement or something. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we could just have a whole episode or two or three on things just around here that I've read about or studied or experienced. But yeah, we won't go there.
no, in fact, we were actually focused on the music here side here too. But that's at least an interesting little bit of history, as well as I guess an interesting topic
Yeah, for
about
sure.
Colorado. So yeah, all right. But nonetheless, Andres, I want to welcome you to my podcast right here. And the way it's going to work is I'm just going to ask you some questions. Let's get to know the man behind the music here too, as well as who you are in general. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So obviously, you kind of told us about your little paranormal, I guess, research there too. So I guess tell us a little more about yourself. I guess who are you? And I guess how did you become a musician?
Yeah, who am I? I really don't know. That's a hard question. I'm definitely a private individual, very introverted. Don't really like people much. Um, and for the last 15 months, I've actually um, just been focusing on my music career and podcasting. I haven't had what you'd call a real job since July of last year, and I'm really enjoying this newly found freedom that I have. How I got into music really well, I grew up in a big family. I had six other brothers and two sisters, and so music was always playing, whether it was, my parents who listened, my dad listened to country western, my mom listened to Spanish and more like 50s and 60s, and then all of my siblings but one is older than I am, so they ran the gamut of all the decades and styles, for the most part. And so it was just always around. And so I started writing lyrics at 7 years old, nothing profound, at 7 years old, what are you going to write about? But I was a lyricist before I was a musician. And then I would say, I think I started playing guitar around 13, 14. And yeah, just been doing that ever since.
I was kind of the same way when I was little too. I was kind of doing more of the lyrics before even jumping into the music. Or it was like songs that I was like really into. I was thinking, what if I had that sort of beat or that sort of song progression playing in the background there too, and then just throw in my lyrics. So
That's 99% of how I write my lyrics. I hear a song that I like, or a melody or progression, like you say, and that's how I structure the lyrics as well. Lyrically, though, I have this thing that I'm trying to work my way out of, where there has to be certain amount of syllables for every section, and they all have to match up. And so I'm trying to, work my way out of that. It's somewhat confining, but at the same time, it brings organization to a song. So
I thought that was like how rap and hip hop was. It was always like a word that ended at this end, then it was like something similar, a similar word, or maybe something that had like a similar sound to be at the end right there. And that's kind of the way I always picture like rap and hip hop, that sort of deal.
yeah, I think I really got into that, always being a fan of poetry, and you have your iambic pentameter, and you have all these different meters and stuff. And I think just reading a lot of poetry, really just got me into that sort of structure and rhythm.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I guess, so did you do any other instruments, I guess, throughout high school, middle school, and all those other grades?
No, when it came down to it, I think the only thing that I remember, we all had that recorder, that we all played in elementary school, was when I played the recorder. Um, and then around that same time, I took up the harmonica until I misplaced it. And, you know, that was pretty much it until, my venture into playing guitar that I can think of. I do remember having an acoustic guitar given to me when I was young, 5, 6 years old, but I didn't know how to take care of it. I'd leave it laying on the ground outside, and it eventually got ran over, and that was it for my first ever guitar. So, yeah, that's how it goes.
Then we cued the German music. No.
Yeah, I was pretty sad about it. I really was. And one more, there was another one. We had an accordion laying around the house that one of my brothers used to scare me with, so I stayed away from that. So, but I grew up with, my aunts and uncles on my mom's side. They played harmonica and guitar and accordion and everything else, so they were very musical. And on my dad's side, they were very lyrical and poetic. So
Put one and one together and we make Andres Herrera. So yeah.
yeah, exactly, pretty much.
Yep. And I guess speaking of which, I guess maybe that ties in here with entropy and motion. So I guess let's get the history lesson about that. So what is it?
Well, entropy of motion really. We'll start with the name first. Why I came up with that. I had that name for probably over 20 years. I remember mentioning it on the Megadeth forums at the time. There was this question like, if you were in a band, what would you name it? And that's what I had said. Just really liked the name. Didn't have a meaning for it other than it just sounds cool, And as I got older, and I decided to do this, that's when it came back to mind, and I had a meaning for it. That takes on different things. For me personally, it's a testament of my faith. It comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, the crux being verse 10 and verse 16. But that's for me personally as well. It kind of branches out, entropy in motion, meaning kind of like a tribute to humanity, how resilient we are. I mean, aside from maybe the times that we ponder, on our own mortality, aside from that, we don't really think about it, and we just get up every day and do what we have to do, build a life, family, whatever, a career. And so it's just a testament to that. And really, it can branch out from there. I could go on and on about it, entropy in society and, nature, things like that. So it takes on a whole lot of different things. So I figure that it mean to other people whatever it can mean. I don't feel like the music or the lyrics should just mean something. I feel like the name should mean something to somebody.
I think it was more along the lines like the science, but I guess what does entropy actually really mean? Is that when like something starts to kind of compress and that sort of thing, or I guess what's your definition?
No, it's pretty much to put it simply, it's like the increase of decrease, if you will. Everything going from orderliness to chaos is just a natural way of things in this world that we live in. And so that's with anything. You put a glass of water, in the microwave and heat it up, and then take it out and just leave it there. It's gradually going to get cooler, and so that's pretty much in a nutshell what it is, like in thermodynamics, and there's all these different things. And so I just kind of always been fascinated with that whole going from orderliness to chaos for some reason, in anything. So anything that you leave unattended, it's just going to happen faster. But nothing can escape it, but we can do our best to kind of maybe slow down the process in our lives or whatever, our surroundings.
Yep. So there's a little bit of science behind it there too. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. There is. I'm a nerd, so there is.
A good choice there too. Well, you did mention about your paranormal stuff, so I imagine he was real big into the sciences too. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I forget what it was used for in terms of like the space and everything too. I'm not too sure. That's when like space slowly starts to close in on itself. Before I guess afterwards it expands back out. I'm not too sure if that was one of their theories or whatever. So
yeah, they've kind of tried to how can I say it? It's they haven't really set a concrete thing as far as that goes. I've studied that, and I've read one thing and then read another. So as far as out in space, I can't really give the answer to that either because I've heard all that as well. So your guess is as good as mine.
let's just say nobody knows anything at this point. They're just throwing theories. So yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just strictly you in this little group? I guess, do you have anybody else that kind of helps out every now and again?
No, aside from, the collaborations that I've done throughout the years, it's just me, a one-man project.
I guess you want to talk about some of those collabs you did? I guess who'd you collab with so far? Is it everyone in our little indie community?
That's kind of started. So I was very hesitant to get on social media. Don't like it at all. But I'm trying. It's still awkward for me. So when I first started, the whole reason behind it was, well, I would be completely fine just making music, putting it out there, and not saying anything. But I thought, before I knock anything, I like to try things. So I got on social media, and even before, I can't remember if it was just before my debut EP came out or just right after. A pop producer that's really well known. He's got a huge following, good numbers, great numbers actually. He hit me up in my DMs on Instagram and was like, "Hey, I'd like to collab with you." And his name's Poetics. I don't know if I mentioned that, but Poetics is his name. And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know anything about it." And so I did a couple of the songs from my debut that I didn't really care for. One especially, I still can't stand. I thought, well, let's try to give it, new life. And I had him take what I had and put a beat to it. And yeah, it actually is a lot better than the original version. And I worked with another hip hop producer after that by the name of Black Shaman. But this is all in 2020. And then another hip hop producer by the name of Jacob Copeland, all in 2020. And I never thought I would get into hip hop at all. But really what drew me to it is in my head, I didn't even know that lo-fi hip hop was a thing. I'm a big fan of jazz and funk and soul and all that. And I always thought, this stuff would be really cool, just kind of set to a chill beat. I didn't know it existed. So when Poetics hit me up, I went and checked the stuff out. And he was strictly a lo-fi artist at the time. I'm like, this is the stuff I've been hearing in my head forever. And so yeah, never planned on doing any of that. So those were the first three. Well, I take that back. One of my friends actually played the keyboard part on one of the songs on my debut. And then more recently, as I got into the Facebook community like a year and a half ago, maybe, I was there, but I didn't really engage with anybody until about the last year or so. And the two that come to mind is Richie Warwick from House of Warwick. One of my favorite artists out there. We talked one day, and I don't remember how it all kind of came out, but he was down to collaborate, because I really strayed away from doing any music with lyrics up until late last year. I mean, I have a couple, I've done some with spoken word poetry that I've written, or a couple of other things, but really, I can't really sing them, or I'm afraid to sing, so I would stay away from it. And so really what kicked off me getting into maybe some more music with vocals recently is my collaboration with 12 Days in June. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's awesome. He's a really amazing artist. And then it just kind of branched out from there, like I say, with Richie Warwick, and then Feminoise as well. So those are the two that come to mind from the Facebook community, and they were both really great experiences that challenged me to grow. So
Yeah, Richie, he's an awesome dude. Interviewed him not too long ago here too. I actually got talked about some of the horror stuff he tends to read. Got like some short stories here. I think it was a Clive Barker, I think was one of them. Not too sure, but and when you said Poetics first, and you think like this guy with a big following, it's almost like, is this a legit one right here? Because I'm assuming you were questioning it at first, be like, wait, is this legit?
yeah, it was. That was part of my research into him. I saw his numbers. He followed me, and then I followed him, and I just saw exactly, like, he's been on his music's been featured on commercials and video games and everything else. So I was like, yeah, this guy's the real deal. So it was really cool. I just learned a lot from him as well. Just by watching how he does things, it was a really good learning experience as well.
That's for sure too. Man, it was probably like a blessing in disguise. And you said that happened during COVID?
This was right before I released my debut in January of 2020. And so this happened around that time, January of 2020. So I don't think COVID, at least it wasn't really a thing around where I live until, what was it, like March, somewhere around there? March, April.
Something like that, yeah. Well, I think it was like March 15th was like the day the world stood still, as I like to say.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess while we're on the topic here, I guess when COVID finally hit your neck of the woods, I guess how bad was it for you, family wise, and then music wise?
Family wise, really, in my home, my wife and my younger daughter and we still live here. None of us got sick, thankfully. Never once got sick from it. Don't really know why. I know I'm really into health and taking supplements and doing all that, so maybe that helped. I have no idea. But it really did. How can I say this? I suffered some very great and significant losses due to COVID, losing family members and whatnot. So, yeah, it definitely left an impact in my life as far as that goes. Musically, I didn't really see anything different. My life at the time consisted of a full-time job and having my family and doing music. So in that sense, it was just business as usual. I didn't gig. I don't connect with people. So I just come home and record. So yeah, it didn't affect me that I can think of.
Well, at least in terms of music wise, it was more like a blessing in disguise, but I know you talked about some of the losses you had right there on the family side. So I'm very sorry to hear that, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. But it is good to see you are doing well there. So good to have you along here for the ride. So I guess so. When you were initially starting off, I guess did you have a particular genre in mind, or were you just kind of messing around and then just seeing where it goes?
Interestingly enough, Entropy in Motion was going to be a doom and stoner band. I was going to do instrumental doom and instrumental stoner until I got the cojones to sing. You know the lyrics that I've written over the years. I've got binders full of stuff. And the reason it kind of branched out was I learned everything on the fly. I had had a cakewalk for years and never done anything with it. And late December of 2019, I'm like, I'm getting older. Now my kids are old enough to where I don't have to watch them 24/7. I can go ahead and start doing this. And so I was working at a university at the time. I had been there at that point in time for like 14, 15 years. And I befriended a professor there that teaches music and, recording. And he gave me a couple of pointers and I just learned everything on the fly. And so I was having a hard time doing the heavy music, mixing it and mastering it. Just sounded awful. So I just thought, well, I have some of this more mellow stuff in my head. Why don't I try that out? And I learned how to mix that really easily. So I became this whole other thing that I never planned to do mellow music. And so he mastered the first album, my first EP, and then I learned from there, and it's just been me ever since. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah, that's good. No, that was good. Actually, I was going to say, what would you say your genre is now? Because it seems like that's the dreaded question you always ask your bands or music projects.
I don't really have a genre. Like I say, I touch on jazz and blues and doom metal, stoner metal. I've worked in lo-fi hip hop, done some world music like uh, Cuban stylings, because I really like old Cuban music. Done some bossa nova, done some spoken word. I've done a lot. I think the genre that I would fit in is not for everybody. That's my genre.
Everything and everything all at once, I'm sure I should say. I was just
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
quote Bilbo from the Unexpected Journey in the Hobbit. So yeah, something like that. That's pretty cool. I guess who would you say has been like your biggest influence in terms of the guitar and I guess your style of music, I should say.
Wow. I started out, blues was my first love. Um, and that all started when I first heard Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix at a very young age. They got me into the blues. And then I went backward in time from there. And I really, where I fell in love with blues the most was in the late 50s. There was this place called Cobra Records, and it had all the greats, a lot of the greats on there. It had Magic Sam and Buddy Guy, Otis Rush, and they were all part of that label. And my brother, who was stationed in Okinawa at the time, he had came back and he had given me this box set called the Cobra Record Story, a 2 CD set. And yeah, I just fell in love with that. And so I was strictly blues for like years. And then I just realized, because this was, late 90s, and I realized that I was just another Stevie Ray Vaughan clone, one of many. And there was so many more out there that were doing it better than I was for a lot of different reasons. And they had their record deals and everything. And um, so I thought, well, I'll just continue doing what I'm doing, even though I listened to a whole bunch of other styles. But then I just kind of got really burned out on playing the same blues licks all the time. And so I just wanted to gravitate from there. And so I went back to my childhood guitar hero, Mick Mars, from Motley Crue, as you know. And it kind of started from there. And then Dave Mustaine, who's a big influence on me, lyrically as well. And I don't really showcase any of those influences much. I just haven't. I really don't showcase that side so much because it always kind of revolves around having lyrics for a song. So again, like I've said, I can't sing them or don't feel like I can, so I stay away from it. Um, I'm trying to keep this list relatively short. I would say the biggest ones right now that have influenced Entropy in Motion the most is Wino. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's the guitar player in bands like The Obsessed and Spirit Caravan and Hidden Hand. He's a doom metal legend, stoner metal legend. Matt Pike from Sleep, High on Fire is another one. And I would say Tosin Abasi and Javier Reyes from Animals as Leaders. They're two big influences as well. So that's probably good enough answer.
Because yeah, when you're thinking of Dave Mustaine, I was actually thinking of their newest song, the How to Sink the Dying Dead. It was We'll Be Back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like come up with those lyrics right there. I'm a soldier of fortune, torture, and pain. And then that whole deal, yeah. So
Oh, that's cool. You're quoting a newer album. Most people won't. So that's really cool.
yeah. Actually, speaking of which, me and I don't know, you know Waiting at the Bridge, TJ Garcia?
I don't think so.
Actually, yeah, he's an indie artist too, and he's in our little community and everything. But he's also big into doom metal, and we've actually released a new. I might keep calling it an album because it was technically 7 songs, but it was kept saying EP or whatever. So there's that whole deal. Actually, that's what you were referencing earlier. But in terms of Dave Mustaine, I don't know if he is doing a new album. I know he did the Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, and I actually saw him in concert down here in my neck of the woods, Pittsburgh. That was actually. I mean, I think now it's like going to be going on 2 months here pretty soon because it was in September. You know, they were actually with All That Remains and Mudvayne. So,
That was a great deal.
oh yeah. No, I would say age kind of affects him in some sort of way because he can't really sing like what he used to. And actually, when he was doing a Tornado of Souls, he didn't actually sing the chorus line. I was kind of a little bummed about that.
Yeah. Well, he also battled throat cancer. So that had to, and then the whole deal with his neck, all those issues, they've really affected his vocals for sure. Age as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's for sure. But he's still getting some ass there too. So he's stuck to his guns. So yeah. And Tosin Abasi, yeah. I actually learned about Tosin actually it was one of the more recent interviews. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember right now. I wish I could remember. So I do know about Animals Leaves.
Beto or Beato or however you pronounce his name. Was it that one?
I'm not sure. I have to go back and see. No, I thought it was more of a recent one or two because I know they gave us he gave me a nice little history about all of Animals as his leaders and I guess the play style and everything there too. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also said Matt Pike, right?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Hopefully he's okay there too because I think he was having diabetes issues or something.
I hadn't heard any of that. The latest I heard was when High on Fire had that new album coming out, which has been a few months now. I'm still hooked on that thing. So
Come with the storm, yeah.
Yeah.
He still got it. So yeah, you gotta love him too. So okay. So I guess I know you talked about Cakewalk earlier, but I guess in terms of the gear that you have, I guess what other gear do you use to make the magic happen?
Wow. I have a big collection of guitars, and I've used like 6 or 7 of them in these recordings. I'm looking at them right now. So the one that I use the most is my Schecter Damien Elite 8 string. Then I've got an Agile Intrepid 828 string and a Javier Reyes LTD, the JR208 string. I use those quite a bit. And then I have a modified Fender Stratocaster. I swapped out the pickups and put a DiMarzio in the bridge, put a couple of lace sensors in the middle and neck pickups. And then I have Steinberger Synapse, the small headless guitars. And I've used my Guild acoustic, on a couple of things as well. And recently, I did buy a Bass 6. I just got that a month ago, and I've already used that in some recording. And one that I've used in recordings, but I haven't released yet, I bought what is called a Taisho Goto bass. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but there's all these different ones. They've got bass and alto, soprano. And the Taisho Goto bass basically is just 2 strings. And there's no way I could show it. I have it in another room, but it's just a small rectangular box that's got these keys that you press with one finger and you pick them with the other. And you could also just play it like a piano. And the reason I got the bass was because when you plug that into fuzz and plug it into an amp, it is perfect for some heavy stoner stuff. It's really good stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've used. And I've used, other stuff like my wah pedals and guitar slides and, stuff like that. And then I've got like this, the only bass that I have, I actually picked up from my brother. It's like a cheap Ibanez bass, nothing to write home about. That has this great tone. I mean, I've recorded with this since 2019, and I've never changed the strings out because I don't want to affect the tone of it. It just sounds so good. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I hope the strings don't bust on you right there, because I always thought there's always a certain point like how long those strings will last too. Especially even when you're just trying to tune, because I used to play cello way back in the day, and after changing like the weather, for instance, whether it was like going from real hot to like real cold, it really messed with the strings. So even when you were trying to tune it, the strings would pop because unfortunately it had the wear and tear because of it. So I would say,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, try to be careful with that. So, but what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I kind of worry about that because it's only a 4-string, so sometimes I've got to tune it down to C sharp, and sometimes it's in standard and whatnot. But one of the workarounds for it for me on this latest EP that I released, there was a couple of parts where I used my bass 6 as a bass. I just rolled off the tone and switched the pickup, and it was perfect for the bass sound I was going for. So I think that's a really great instrument to have. I've wanted one all my life, and it's really great. Very versatile. To do heavy and all these different things. It's great.
I guess you use an interface, and then I guess you're still using a cakewalk to put the music together.
Yeah, well, an interface. It's kind of weird because I did have this what is it called, the Scarlett 2i2 as an interface, and I did not like that thing. I don't like that thing. Never used it once. And I thought, man, my career has ended before it even started because that's all I had until I realized an old Zoom pedal that I have, multi-effects pedal, actually doubles as an audio interface. So I have this real humble setup. If you go into what I call my studio, I've got a laptop that's like 15 years old. It still does, still works. And then to the left of me, I've got this old TV tray, faced right here with my multi-effects pedal as an audio interface, plugged into my laptop, and then, my pedals and all that. And that's how I do it. Very, very humble setup, but it gets the job done.
I mean, hey, considering the sound that I was getting from some of the songs I was listening to, it did sound pretty kick-ass. So yeah.
Thanks, man.
Of course. Actually, were you doing it in this room, or is there a separate room where you guys do all the recordings and everything?
Oh, it's a separate room. This eventually where I'm at now is what I want to convert into my studio. When my oldest daughter moved out and made a life of her own, this is her old bedroom, and so now it's my vinyl room where I have all my my vinyl and stuff and my guitars and everything. But it also has doubled in recent weeks as the storage until my wife decides what she wants to put out in the outside storage. So I'm still kind of waiting on that. One of the things I've thought about doing is going on Facebook Live or something and playing some of my 8 strings or my bass 6 or whatever, but it's so cluttered around here that it's just too embarrassing to show all that stuff. So I haven't done that yet.
I see. I guess the other option would be to kind of turn into the video game studio. And I don't know how big you are into video games or anything.
That's kind of funny because recently I started getting back into video games. I hadn't really been into it too much in recent years just because I wanted to focus all my energy on music and other endeavors like working out and practicing Krav Maga and learning new languages and different things that I didn't really set time aside for video games. To kind of drive that further, I didn't. Let me just put it this way: I barely beat Breath of the Wild like 3 weeks ago because I didn't really touch video games. And so, yeah, and I've recently got into it and haven't really felt that. I think this is the first time really in my recording career that I haven't really felt like being in the studio every day. But I wanted to do something. So, yeah, I'm playing a lot of video games now. I recently got that. I don't know if you heard that Analog came out with this Nintendo 64 thing with like new 3D stuff. Yeah, I pre-ordered one of those. So
I was always real big into Sony and very rarely got into like the Xbox and Microsoft side. But I was always a Sony kid from like the very beginning, whenever they first started coming out, like there in the '90s. And I still remember my first rated M for mature game, which was Dino Crisis, which was almost like a Resident Evil with dinosaurs in it. So actually some scary shit, but that was the first rated M for mature game. And then I was real big into Tomb Raider.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Not so much the newer games, but it was more the very old ones, the very first three that came out. So yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I those are the ones I remember. Yeah, I'm probably, well, I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm 44 years old, so I know those older ones a lot more than the newer ones. And that's the thing that sucks for me is I get motion sickness really bad. So I've never played more than 5 minutes of even 007 on Nintendo 64 because I got so sick just playing that. So that sucked.
I don't know what you do with Mario Kart or that Super Smash Brothers.
Those don't bother me. It's usually just the first person games that do that to me.
So
So
you
I've
would be
never.
okay with like a third person point of view? I guess something like what you see
Yeah,
with like Gears of War.
yeah, anything like that. Like any of these newer Zelda, like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, they're fine. Um, my daughter, she's really big into Fortnite and all this stuff that they're all into. But I can't play those games with her because, yeah, I'll get sick after like 5 minutes. I watched her one time for 5 minutes because she wanted to show me all these cool things, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't watch. I'm getting sick. So yeah, I don't know why that. It is what it is.
Actually, speaking of which, I guess, do you use some of the video games that you have played? I guess even some other stuff for your lyrical content? Or yours kind of like all just a robotic sort of voice, kind of talk about this and that?
I've never used. No, I never have. I think the closest I've come to that is sometimes I think in terms of how would this sound if it was a video game soundtrack. And my default is always like Zelda. Of course, I've been a Zelda fan ever since the first game came out, and really love the music on all the Animal Crossing stuff. It's got this lo-fi jazz kind of quality to it, so that's about the closest. It's never inspired like lyrics for me at all. It should though. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Actually, a game that I was always real big into. Not so recently, because I've really gone like a year or maybe even two without playing video games, but I was real big into like the Bloodborne and the Souls, Dark Souls. So, as they would call it, Soulsborne, as they would call it. So, those are fun games. I don't know. You're really big into those ones?
No, I pretty much just stick to the ones that I know for all these years. Um, if you were to look at my Switch collection, for instance, you'd see like 6 or 7 Zelda games on there, Animal Crossing and Mario Party. Like I'm not a very fun, adventurous gamer. For how I branch out a lot in genre of music, I don't branch out a lot in video game genre at all.
Yeah, I see. But I guess speaking of which, in terms of your music too, I guess how do you normally go about creating your music? Do you know sometimes have like lyrics written and then try to put music around it, or do you sometimes just think over maybe a riff, for instance?
Well, we'll start with instrumental music since that's what I do most and that's what I started with. To be honest with you, so by nature, I'm a perfectionist and an overthinker, like really bad. And so when I started Entropy in Motion, I wanted to be the exact opposite as a means of challenging myself to step out and maybe grow as a person. So what I do honestly is I program the drums first and foremost, most of the time. and then I'll come up with something as the drums are going, and it's usually the first idea, usually, and I say first take in quotation marks just because it seems like the minute I hit record, I can't play anything, you know. But it's usually the first idea. Once I get past that first hurdle, I can play the thing through and be done with it. And that's kind of how it is. I don't really go back and rework anything or try to make anything better. It's all just the impetuousness of it all, the spontaneity of it. So and you know, there's times where I've definitely, you know, I've sat there sometimes while I'm watching, you know, rugby or something, and I'm playing the guitar, and I'll mute it real quick, and I have my phone next to me, so I'll turn on the recorder just to grab an idea. And so I've taken a couple of those, but that's how that works. As far as music with lyrics, it's always been the lyrics first for me. I've never done the music first that I can think of. Um, I think I definitely enjoy being a lyricist and a poet more than a musician. And it feels so wrong to say that, but it's the truth. And so, yeah, I've just kind of always heard it all in my head. So I would structure the lyrics in a way that would fit with the music I heard in my head.
Because I don't feel bad. I think it's easier when you're just writing as a solo artist because you get to decide the direction you want to go. Whereas when you're collabing with somebody, you want to at least hear what music they're doing, then make
Mhm.
sure the lyrics tie in right there, so you're not doing a sort of jarbled lyrics. I guess in your type of music here too. This jarbled lyrics are pretty much like a big thing for like metal, that sort of deal.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
so let's see. Actually, where do they do rugby at? Is this one like overseas, or is there some sort of rugby close by in Colorado?
You know, when I worked at the university, there was this rugby club um, that they had, but I think that fizzled out. Really, what got me into rugby was watching the World Cup. I'd always wanted to watch rugby. It didn't start until the World Cup last year, I believe it was. So I've kind of studied up on it more, and I found out that yeah, there's actually quite a few rugby clubs here in Colorado. And then they have all these, you know, it's like soccer. They've got all these different leagues that eventually culminate in being in the World Cup. So I watch anything from the World Cup rugby to college rugby and some of these club stuff that they show on like ESPN Plus and stuff.
Actually, wasn't there the Olympics? And I guess there was one that we did that was like a big run, and we ended up winning that match because of that big run or something.
Hmm. It doesn't come to mind.
Sorry, I thought it was what I was about to say. It was like football here too. Like they just broke open and it just ran for the touchdown, as I like to say. I swear it was the U.S. I thought maybe it was the bronze match or something.
Mm, I I can't think. Oh, that was the women's, right? Wasn't it the one that?
It was the women's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was. That.
No
Yeah,
man,
now that
although
you
the
say it.
last few seconds, oh man,
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to sports, it's really for me. I really like watching rugby, and always been a fan of NHL. I used to be an NFL fan, an NBA fan, but it's been probably about 6 or 7 years since I watched the NFL. Probably twice that long for the NBA, but I still stick with hockey and now rugby.
I'd say at least in terms of hockey, we get to see some men do some real fighting as they're doing. Not the gloves, punch some people in the face, that sort of deal. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's been great. You know, being a kid in the '80s, I got to see a lot of really good rivalries and stuff. You know, for a long time now. You said you're from Pittsburgh, and one of my top three teams is the Pens. Always has been. So
I don't know about recently. I mean, the last couple of years they've really been kind of stinking the joint out, which is kind of sad to say the least.
yeah,
So
definitely.
I mean, what can you do? I mean, it seems like they're playing to like get Mike Sullivan fired at this point, which is really a shame because my dad really likes Mike Sullivan as their coach. So I don't know. Seems like there's going to be a long rebuilding phase at this point. So strap yourselves in.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure. Every team goes through it.
at some points, yeah. I was just going to say, you guys in Colorado Avalanche, you guys won it what 2 or 3 years ago?
Yep. Yeah, 2 years ago. I believe it was 2 years ago. Something like
Oh,
that.
something like that. Yeah, that one was pretty fun to watch. So yeah,
It was. It's just weird how when this last year and a half, the way I've told you, I've focused more on music and everything else. like time kind of just blends in. I couldn't tell you if it was last year or last night that they won the Stanley Cup. Really, I just know it was recently because I watched it, of course. But I sports and stuff like that doesn't usually get my guts in a knot. But watching the Avs play, or the Blackhawks when they were in contention, or the Penguins, yeah, I watched the Stanley Cup after it was over. I couldn't watch it during. Once I knew the outcome, I could watch it.
We catch up on the highlights afterwards. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Actually, for the next question right here, in terms of challenges, because I actually want to break this into two parts. So, first part, tell us what sort of challenges you face these days being a musician.
Man, that's a tough question. I guess because the tough challenge, I guess, for me is the thing that I can't stand the most is putting out an album and saying, hey, in so many words, going on social media and being like, hey, I got a new album out, click on pre-save and check it out on this link and that link and whatever. I just don't like doing that. That is the biggest challenge for me, is to tell people that I've got something, or I've got something in the works. And I really tried hard, on social media to kind of be more that person. But like I've said many times I've said this, is every time I say that, I feel like I'm that guy that calls you to tell you about your car's warranty or whatever. That's the way I feel. Your car's extended warranty, and that is the biggest challenge for me. As far as aside from that, singing that's the one too that really. I think that's probably one of the reasons why I am kind of taking a break from music, is just because I'm so frustrated that I can't sing the stuff. And so it seems like everything that I'm writing at this point all, involves lyrics. So I'm just kind of staying away from it right now, because it's so hard to find collaborators, in the sense that there are many people who are willing to collaborate, but everybody's got their own lives. They don't do music for a living. They got families, they got, everything else. So it's kind of hard, for them to find the time. And while I understand that on a personal level, it's frustrating for me on the musical level, because it feels like the music has to come out and it's just festering inside of me, and it kind of leads to frustration, not towards, the other people, mind you. It's just the fact that it just feels like a boil that's ready to be lanced. And so I think those are the two things, the biggest challenges.
But yeah, and stuff trying to be the promoter too. And actually, when he said extended warranty or car warranty, I was thinking like, call 1-800. I think I'm going insane today. That'll deal, yeah. So
Yeah,
I can see why.
exactly. Yeah.
I think now
Yeah.
it's the whole thing with like doing the election deals. I think I had like two. It was like one was saying spam and one was potential spam. So yeah, those ones get frustrating there too. Can't wait till this is all over. But
Pretty soon.
after next week. So hopefully
Yep.
next week we'll just have it be water under the bridge. It'll be like we'll just calm our bases and move on with our lives. Just leave it at that. But the other part I wanted to kind of talk about in terms of this one, it seemed like you mentioned how you're a real big introverted too, and I would say I'm introverted as well. I mean, I tried to stint in sales. That did not go well. I'll tell you that much. So I guess, how do you try to overcome that whole introvert C, if that makes sense? Because I tend to kind of create that word.
I don't think I've ever really made a good attempt at it, aside from like what we just mentioned, being on social media, which I've always been awkward with. I can't think of a time where I've tried not to be introverted. I've always kind of accepted the way I was and celebrated the way I am. And much to the chagrin of other people, because they really think I'm a standoffish, asshole. I don't know if I can say that on your podcast, but I get labeled that a lot, just because I'm very to myself and pretty much a stoic person. So I just kind of, I've always kind of lived my life like I'm not here to prove myself to anybody. I'm just going to be me, and if you gravitate towards that, that's cool, and if you don't, then you don't.
Yeah, I can see why. But that's also the reason I started this podcast here too, is to kind of break down the barriers my introversy. That makes sense. So, but
Yeah, it
it's
does.
good to be.
I've actually listened to a lot of your episodes, and believe it or not, like when I know it was on Facebook that I first heard about you, and I listened to your podcast, and it was like, you know, at the time I listened to like two or three, and it was like, one day I'm going to be on this podcast. Like that was one of my goals, was to be on your podcast. So here we are. You know, came to pass.
The stars aligned. That'll do right there.
Yeah,
Light
for
showed
sure.
down on Andres Herrera that day. So yeah,
Yep.
I
Yep.
do. So, but I mean, it was bound to happen sooner or later. Actually, I kept seeing you were really liking Bond of Iniquity's posts. Maybe he was like releasing new music. I think that's how I found out about you. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Nate's a great guy. Great guy. Puts out some killer music.
yep. I think it was his birthday recently. So happy birthday, Nate.
Yep. Happy birthday, Nate. Yep. That was a few days ago.
Something like
Like,
that.
well, I
Yeah.
think it was October 30th, something like that. Somewhere around there.
The day before Halloween. Oh man.
Yeah, something like that.
That's interesting. Actually, I know he was kind of struggling with his house because I guess he was dealing with some bad insurance or something. I don't know if he also moved into a bad house with like some bad structure, I guess. I'm not too sure, but I think he's doing okay right now. Maybe some little scrapes and bruises here and there because I guess he's doing the work all by himself. So
Yeah, he and I there for a while in the summer until all this stuff started happening with him that he had to really devote his time to that. He and I would actually DM each other quite often. And in talking to the guy, like he's got many great stories to tell about the artists he's worked with and the concerts he's, done sound for, or the records he's done engineering on. Like that guy's got some great stuff to tell. I'll tell you that much.
as I got downgraded into an Amazon driver. So
Yeah.
so but you gotta do what you gotta do. So God bless you, Nate. Keep going there, mate. So, I know you mentioned about Facebook earlier, but I guess I know social media is not really your strong suit. But I guess what other social media are you on outside of Facebook?
Um, Instagram, that was the first one. Um, I'm trying to think. Um, those are the two that come to mind. I know there's more, but for some reason, I recently got on Threads, but I find like that too is um, kind of frustrating. I guess for me, it's the whole deal of, it's not that I care if people like it or if they don't like it, but if I see that there's no reaction, it doesn't hurt my feelings or offend me or anything. But I'm always the kind of person that if I feel like it's a waste of my time or energy, I won't invest in it. And so I have accounts on X and all these other places that I just, if you don't talk about, your typical kind of garden variety stuff that everybody's into, you don't really get much interaction. So it's like, nah, it's just a waste of time and energy. I'd rather, devote it to other things more productive.
That or it ends up being like a toxic environment. I know that's the problem with X these days. So
Yeah, I haven't really been on there in a long time. And I know Facebook was kind of like that for a while. Don't really want to get into much of that, but I just noticed that there was some division there, and my stance on a lot of things are, I have my stance, but I'm still going to treat people like they're people unless they convince me to treat them otherwise. And so I'm not going to get on this bandwagon in favor of people or against other people. And what really, I think that was off putting to a lot of people, because I would set these boundaries, like say, hey, this, you can't expect X, Y, and Z from me, when you don't really know who I am aside from these kind of things. And I think putting up boundaries was taken as an affront or as a betrayal, where it's like, no, like I'm just setting boundaries as to how far you can, take things with me. Like, feel free to be whoever you are, and I'm accepting, and I'm a kind person, but you kind of push those, and it'll piss me off real quick. So I don't put up with that kind of stuff.
I was gonna say, like, I got standards, So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I think we're kind of in the clear on that. There's just a lot going on with everybody in the indie scene right now on the Facebook side of it, that everybody seems to be really going through something or just feeling a strong sense of burnout right now. So kind of sucks, in a way. I hate to see my fellow indie artists going through things and, um, not being able to devote more time to making music, and, it just kind of sucks. I feel for them. My heart goes out to everybody.
Yeah, I know. Christina was kind of messaging or putting a little post on Facebook, kind of talking about how she was a little burned out at times as well as not feeling great. I don't know why did that sort of condition. That's what I want to say. And I know Burlos man, aka Steven, he said he's kind of, I don't know, so much burnout, or I thought it was more mental. So I can see what you mean. It's sad. But I think just one of the things to take a little deep breath, maybe take a little break, and come back better and stronger the next day. So
Yeah, for sure. And those two, Vox, I call her Vox, and Burlos, they are two very integral parts of the community, and they're two of my closest friends. I really, have enjoyed talking to them. Even in DMs, we've talked a lot about a lot of things or whatever. And so to see them kind of going through it too, yeah, it's, it seems like there's those certain ones that when they're not around, like the whole community suffers.
sadly, but yeah. But I guess it is kind of leading to this question right here too. So I guess what sort of advice would you give to those musicians who are perhaps struggling in this sort of instance?
Oh man, I'm trying to say this as nicely as I can, because again, sometimes I'm very off-putting. I don't mean to be. I think really you just do the music because that's what your passion is. You're always going to have your supporters, you're always going to have your detractors, and those numbers most of the time are going to pale in comparison to the indifferent. And so you just got to do it for you, and don't worry about the likes, the listens, the numbers. Sure, it's great, but at the end of the day, I see that music is more as an extension of who we are. The likes and playlist ads and all that don't do the same thing. So why are we putting so much value on them? And that's kind of how I see it.
That's a
And
good point. Yeah,
I guess to say, like, I really do. I want to say, in saying that, I want to say, like, I really appreciate everybody who's ever given me any kind of support. I've always tried to, when I notice it, to, excuse me, whether on Facebook or Instagram, to say, hey, put a post or my story of, hey, thank you, so and so, for always supporting me, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I'm one of those people that I'm going to make music whether people listen or not. I don't care if they like it or not. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do it.
I was like, you use it felt like a torture device. Be like, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna like it. That's our deal. So yeah,
Yeah, I think my music could be used for methods of torture for sure. Sometimes.
got a little Guantanamo Bay sort of action going on right now. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that too. And sometimes it sucks to be more direct, let alone maybe somewhat off-putting. I won't say totally off-putting because I'm not too sure how people would react to that, but I think sometimes it's best to be, in this case, truthful, to say the least. So, I mean, you're just speaking your mind too, especially from your experiences from being both on social media and in the music scene here too, as well. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, there's been many times where I've had people in my DMs hit me up and say, "Man, your music sucks. You suck. You suck as a guitar player." Blah blah blah, and it's just like, whatever. I don't really care.
have a good day, mister. So, yeah, that'll deal.
Yeah,
Hey,
pretty much.
hey. And keep trudging on there, good soldier. So,
Yep,
give it
yep.
up. Hey. So, Andreas, we briefed for questions here pretty good, but now we're down to the fun ones. Ready?
Hmm.
All right. So, start here with the first one, I guess. What would you consider as your favorite food?
My favorite food is definitely Mexican food, as far as where I grew up. Growing up here, sorry, this answer is going to be kind of long, but here where I live, it's a very different type of Hispanic. We even have a different kind of Spanish than most people. So we've been labeled as saying certain words wrong, like that's not the Spanish word for this or for that. No, we just have a different dialect. And so we also have our own different culture and different things. So it's definitely the Mexican food here that we eat. Like,
I was gonna say, is it like still like the traditional like quesadillas, those enchiladas, and all those guys?
yeah, it's just the way that they're prepared or the ingredients that we use. They're somewhat a little bit different. Like, um, you have your staples, of course, like your chili powders, your garlic, and all this and that. But growing up, I never heard of putting sour cream on enchiladas, or never even knew that cilantro existed until like you know 15-20 years ago. And I can't stand that stuff. So yeah, pretty much it's just we grew up eating the staples.
So they put sour cream in the quesadillas, right?
Oh yeah, I mean I love sour cream on Mexican food now. Like I absolutely love it. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it's just the bare bones beef red chili, um, and pork green chili, which I'm trying to stay away from pork, but pork green chili and you know again, kind of the staples growing up in a big family. It was beans and potatoes all the time, rice and all that. So, but really, I like trying pretty much any cuisine. I can't think of one that I've tried that I don't like.
Fair enough. Yeah, actually, that was my dad's birthday. Yeah, and we did a little Mexican dish, and surprisingly, I thought he was gonna do those sizzling fajitas. You always see him carrying out, and just sizzling real loud. And trying to remember, mine was a burrito. Yeah, I was trying to remember what my burrito was. It was like a California burrito where they just had the beans, the rice, and the protein in it, all that stuff. So
hmm hmm
here we go, Mexico. Viva, viva la Mexico, Mexico. So yeah, yeah, great choices there. Yeah. Now for the next one, I don't know how much TV you watch, but if you have a favorite TV series or a movie, tell us what you got.
I don't watch much TV, but there's a lot of things that I watch, if that makes sense. My favorite series, it comes down to two of them, and I can't decide between the two: MASH and Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Good choices, but which one's a Star Trek Deep Space Nine? Is that still with Picard?
No, that's Captain Cisco when they're on you know um for they're in this like space station. It looks like it's like this round space station. It's got these, you know, like hooks where the ships dock. Can't think of the name of it for the life of me, and I know the name of that, and it's gonna kill me that I can't think of it right now.
I don't feel bad. I'm not too good with Star Trek. I just know William Shatner was the first Captain Kirk. So
Yeah,
then beat me up,
Terok
Scotty.
Nor, Terok Nor or something. I can't think of what it is, but yeah, that's the one with Captain Cisco, and that's where Odo and plays a more prominent role, and Worf went to there, and he was even better on Deep Space Nine. I felt it's a lot darker of a Star Trek, and I think it's probably most people's least favorite, but it's my favorite.
Yeah, because they really like the lightheartedness they had with the older ones. So you can see why. And I don't know. Should we count it as a good thing that people aren't watching too much TV or movies these days?
Yeah, if they're doing something productive, I guess. Yeah.
Hopefully. So all right, but great choices there nonetheless. All right. So I don't know if you drink any alcohol here for the next one, but if you do, what would you say is your favorite alcoholic drink, and what's your favorite non-alcoholic drink?
Favorite non-alcoholic drink, I'll start there, is definitely water. But uh, I have to have a monster every day. Um, I just can't get away from energy drinks. They don't do anything for me other than I just like the taste. Horchata is another one. So those are probably my top three that I could think of off the top of my head. Um, Alcoholic drinks, I really do like dark beer. The one that I drink the most is called Spaten Optimator. It's from Germany. It's 8.4%. Really great beer. Really, really do enjoy that. And recently, the last couple of years or so, I've really gotten into drinking brandy. I'd never, that I could remember, ever drank brandy. It was, for me, I used to struggle with alcohol addiction really bad. But now, you know, I can drink one or two and be fine. I like to have a drink once in a while. For me, it was always like, I still have this rule of, I don't like to mix it. I'm a straight shooter. So, it's Crown Royal and cognac, different, those kind of things. Good scotch, um, rye whiskey, yeah, that stuff's pretty strong. And yeah, I like that kind of stuff too. There's one that, but as far as to go back to the brandy, I was never, it has this effect on me. I don't know if it's, an effect on most people, but during the holidays a couple of years ago, my daughter actually got me a big bottle of expensive brandy. I can't think of the brand off the top of my head. And I'd never tried it, so I decided, well, I want to kind of maintain. So I did mix it with something. Can't remember what it was. Oh, it's this apple flavored pop. I say pop, not soda. I don't know where you're from if you say soda, but I say pop. It's an apple flavored pop called Manzanita Sol, which is really good for mixed drinks with whiskeys. And I mixed it with that, and before I knew it, I was sitting in the recliner, and I felt like I was sinking into that recliner. I just got this warm feeling, and I was just sinking into it. And I'm the kind of person who doesn't relax. I don't sleep much. I'll either not sleep at all, or up to 4 hours is good enough for me for the most part. Yeah, but drank that, and I was like sinking into that recliner really, really well. So
I got Daddy snoring pretty loud there afterwards. So I was saying, normally I never really went heavy or dark, any sort of dark drinks, if you know what I mean. So I tried Guinness when I was over in Austria the one time. I could not do it for the life of me. So I was like, once you got past the foam, that's when you start getting into the heavy stuff, and it was like, ugh. So I still didn't hear about that German beer. I guess what was it called?
yeah, Spaten Optimator. Sounds like a transformer.
Yeah, no way.
I'll put it. I'll send it to you in the messages later on. It's really
Right.
good beer.
I mean, I believe it too. So, yeah.
I want to answer that one in real quick. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm kind of a snob when it comes down to it. But a couple of years ago, when you're younger, you just drank whatever you could find or whatever somebody would buy you. When you're underage. And after that, I haven't really touched any of that stuff until one day I went to my brother-in-law's house, and he had Miller High Life, and I was kind of just, busting his balls about it. And I was like, no, I'm just kidding. I'll drink it. Man, that was like one of the best beers I had ever drank was, so if I don't want to go into this higher end stuff, like I'm always down to drink Miller High Life. So
I've always been light. I've always been more into the ciders, like an Angry Orchard. So I'm pretty a light drinker. So
yeah, there was this one a couple years ago that my friend turned me on to, and I wish I could think of the name of it. But supposedly they found the recipe for this beer in a pyramid in Egypt. So it was thousands of years old. And a brewery from here in Colorado actually made it. I think it's called like Doghead or something like that, is the name of the company. So we bought this beer, and it was like $15 for a 4-pack. And this stuff was strong. Well, the problem with it is it was like infused with all these like flowers and this and that. So it gave you a jolly kind of high, you know. I couldn't explain it, but I couldn't stand it. It even gave me a headache that I passed out, and it wasn't not like literally passed out, but I went to sleep, and now not because of how strong the alcohol was, because I've got a pretty good tolerance. I did not like the sensation of it, but everybody was raving about how good this stuff was, and when I tried it, I was like, yeah, I don't like being this jolly and happy, and so I just went to sleep.
Andres, come on, man. So that deal. Actually, the way your guy described it too, it's almost like they shoved like marijuana into like a wine bottle or something. They just liquefied it. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think in the ingredients it was anything like that, but just whatever they chose. It had a real like flowery taste to it, and the taste wasn't so bad. It was just the effects.
They'll do that to you. So yeah, I was gonna say if I had a bottle out of King Tut's tomb at this point, so those boys
Yeah.
knew how to party back then. So yeah,
Oh, for sure, for sure.
all right.
I think it was like 11%, 12%.
Ooh, so they were going pretty strong, man.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to know what they were doing afterwards. I mean, that must have been. I had a hard time trying to walk in a straight line afterwards. So I mean, they weren't getting home that night.
Yeah, they definitely left it out of the history books for a reason.
Good choice. So yeah, all right. The great choices there nonetheless. And actually, always get a nice little history lesson to have some stuff out of here too. So it's always something you learn from these podcast interviews. So, right. And for the last fun questions, what is currently your favorite song? If you have one from the mainstream world and then one from the indie community, feel free to share those.
My favorite song in the indie community right now, I would have to say, man, I was listening to one recently. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of it in my head. I've been listening to quite a bit. So to narrow it down to a favorite, I'm going to have to say that I'm going to narrow it down to Burlow's band did one not too long ago. I can't think of what it's called, but it was haunting. It was a haunting blues. I think it was like pretty much mostly a black cover, and it had his fedora on it. I wish I could think of what it's called. For the life of me, I can't remember it. But just the way he played the guitar and the echo on it and everything, it kind of reminded me a lot of going back to that Cobra Records thing that I was telling you about. It really sounded a lot like that, and it reminded me a lot of Fleetwood Mac's Black Magic Woman, and just how haunting that Peter Green, would make his blues. And so I was like, wow, this is rad. Like I even DM'd him. I'm like, dude, like the guitar work, his deep voice and his delivery. I was like, dude, I'm hooked on this song. So that's the one from the indie community. Newer one from the mainstream. I can't narrow it down to a song, but I'm going to say that the newest, what is it? The Brant Bjork Trio has a great album that recently came out, which is a great stoner album. I'm sure you're familiar with him, right? Brant Bjork. He used to play bass with Sleep, and then he went off on his own. I think it was Sleep that he played in, and I really like how they have most of the album mixed. Is they have this, and I'm going to probably steal this idea from him, just because it sounded so killer. Is they had, the guitars panned to one side and the bass to the other. And normally the way I do it is I have, you know, um, double track guitars panned one to the left and right, and the bass in the middle. Well, he had it where he had the bass on one channel, arm, panned in one side and the guitar on the other, and it just sounded killer.
That's actually interesting. Actually, I didn't know about that bass player from Sleep. Sleep was actually known for their album that was like an hour-long song. Was that what it was?
Oh, Dope Smoker, yeah,
Dope
I can't
Smoker, yeah.
remember. No, I'm sorry. Brant Bjork played in Caius, I believe, because El Cisneros, from what I can always remember, has always been the bass player in Sleep.
Not too familiar with the names. I'll have to probably look them up there a little bit, but actually, thanks for sharing that too. So it's always good to especially a nice little shout out to Steve as well for his work in the Barlow span. But yeah. Once I interviewed him, let's say he was a man of few words. I will say that. So
Yeah, that's the tough thing with podcasts is I try to, because that's how I am by nature, but I try to not be that way on a podcast because you're meant to talk. So
yeah, still a great guy nonetheless. You too. Hope he's
oh
doing
yeah,
okay.
he's a killer dude. Yeah, killer dude. We actually had on my most recent album, he actually was lined up to do a couple of songs on it, and he actually did the spoken word part, which was killer. And then he had the vocal version of my song, "My Name Ain't Murder." I wrote the lyrics and I sent them to him, and he's like, "I don't know when I'm going to get to him." He had just mentioned to me, things were not going so well for him, which will remain between he and I. And so I kind of waited a couple days, and I thought, I don't want him to feel like this is looming over his head or that there's these expectations. So I just told him, you know what, man, don't even worry about it. I'm going to go another direction. I just released it as an instrumental. I just, you know, in certain circumstances, if they tell me like I'm busy, but I'll get to it, I can sit and wait. But I was really starting to feel like, the guy's got enough to deal with. Maybe the song or wasn't even in his mind, but I just, that part of me felt bad. Like if it is on your mind, let's just not make it an issue.
It's a good choice, but at least it worked out in the end. So, all right. And thank you so much for sharing that too, mate. It really does mean a lot. All right. So, Andres, we're down to one more question on my podcast right here, but I guess before we jump into it, would you like to ask me any questions or you got any final words you want to share before we close?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Do you play at all? You got anything out there recorded?
Actually, that's what I was talking about earlier with TJ Garcia at Way at the Bridge. Me and him, we actually collaborate together. It's actually a project called Demiurge, and I do drums. Actually, my drum set's tucked over there. I keep it. Basement kind of makes a little bit of an L shaped, so tucked over there. Even though all my interface and everything's right over here. I didn't mention about the Scarlett 2i2. I got the Scarlett 18i20, which I know a major step up, but I was thinking I was going to be doing a little bit more than just doing podcast interviews and that sort of stuff. But I do drums and I've done vocals on our works that we've done together, and he handles the guitars and bass.
I didn't realize you were in Demiurge. I did not realize that.
I'm gonna say I
Wow.
did actually. I did put a couple posts up about our EP and album that we are actually getting ready to release on October 31st of Halloween. So, I'm not sure if you saw that.
Can't think about. I can't think of that. No, but I've seen that name around quite a few times, and I'm sure I've listened to it. But yeah, I don't know.
I want to say ours is probably
That's
the only
pretty
one
cool.
that's like a. I want to say ours is probably the only one that's like a heavy metal. I think everyone else is maybe like the. I want to say rabbit hip hop. I'm not too sure. I have seen the name, so I figured, you know what, I love the name because it's a creator, and I figured like, you know what, it sounds pretty cool. So let's go with that. Special shout
Yeah,
out to
for
Miss
sure.
Shuka for actually having that song too.
For sure. Of course, you're the host and this is your podcast, but you said you asked if I had any questions. So I want to ask you a question because one of the things that I really like is just because I focus mostly on guitar and lyrics, I like to listen and pick apart every member in a band and try to find ways to integrate like their sound and their approach on their respective instrument into the guitar. And so that's a lot of reason why some of my 8-string stuff is very percussive is because I listen to a lot of drummers. So I do want to know like who your top drummers are, who's influenced you, because there's been so many great ones out there.
Well, yeah, right about that. I'd say I was always into more of the heavier metals. Yeah, I know you said about stoner and sludge and that sort of metal. I mean, I dig those ones, but I've dug more of the heavier, sometimes death metal sort of groups. So guys like George Corlius from Nile was one. Pete Sandoval, formerly of Morbid Angel, now Terrorizer. Let's see, I'll give a shout out to Joey Jordison. I know we lost him right there, but and he was pretty fun to listen to, especially like on the older albums. I mean, we could say Dave Grohl because I always did like the work he did with Nirvana when he was initially with them, and especially even when he formed like Foo Fighters because I think he did that before Taylor Hawkins came around. I think there's Trey Williams of Dying Fetus. He's pretty fun to listen to, and then Adam Jarvis of Misery Index, John Longstrife. This could kind of go on right there too, but normally it's just listening to them. I can't play as fast as like some of them, but it's at least fun to at least try. So
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, that's one of the things I really like about Stoner is the drum fills, the excessive drum fills that they use is great. And that's, the drums in post rock is a whole other world as well. Bands like Russian Circles and, ISIS and all them. Like the drums when it comes to post rock, I just love listening to those. So no, that's a great list. And you mentioned Sandoval and that's cool because that was another great time. For me in the '80s, I didn't like the '80s as far as like what was popular. I didn't like the synth sound much. But when it came time to came around to like the '80s, '90s, with thrash metal and speed metal and all that. Like the drummers are just killer. So many great ones. The drummer from Carcass and Bolt Thrower and all that. Yeah, I could go on and on. Great, great drummers.
I would say both Thrower too, and especially Mitch Harris of Napalm Death when he was initially with them. And I think both Thrower jumped around a little bit because I think the album I actually covered in its entirety, the Fourth Crusade, I think it was Andrew Love was his
That's my
name.
favorite album.
Yeah, I've actually covered that. I should say I didn't do the last song, Throughout the Ages, because that one was, I thought it was filler. I didn't really dig it that much. I did cover all the rest of them. Let's see. And then I think Martin Kearns, I always thought he came later, but I don't know if he was initially with them in the beginning. So I don't know. That's the reason why they actually broke up after he had passed, tragically. So I guess, was there anything else?
There was at a time when you were talking earlier, and I can't remember what it was, but it's pretty cool to kind of get into the world of the podcast host every once in a while and hear where they're kind of coming from. Do you ever get into like jazz drummers or any of those? Because to me, I've always kind of don't get me wrong, I love metal. I think thrash is right underneath for me of doom and stoner, but um, I would always tell my friends, it's like, you like blast beats and they're cool, but you think that, so and so invented them, or, you think it's a metal thing. I was like, this is a jazz thing from the 60s, from the bebop era, Max Roach, and all these different kind of drummers, I just kind of nerd out on them. So then I'll play them something like from Max Roach Plus 4 album or whatever, and they're like, yeah, this guy's doing blast beats, in the 60s. I'm like, yeah.
I knew jazz, a lot of the blues, and some of the other ones had some sort of influence within metal, maybe like double bass, what you got with Dave Lombardo. Um, I never really dug really much into jazz, to be honest. I know it has like a big implication in terms of music and everything there too, but for me, I think it was more soul because in our neck of the woods, we have a couple musicians who are pretty well known, like Jimmy Adler, and then there's Billy Price. So, but Billy, he's more into like soul. He'd say he's more like a soul than a blues artist. So,
Yeah, yeah. Not that you're asking, but I would recommend just to give it a listen to one time is there's this album by Buddy Rich and Max Roach called Rich versus Roach. That's a killer album to listen to. I think you'd dig it. There's a song on there called Crazy Eights where it's just them on the drums. And if you know the sound, and their styles, you know which one's Rich and which one's Roach, and they just both do some amazing stuff on there.
I'd say riches and roaches. How about that ordeal?
Yeah.
It's kind of clever. I never heard about that. I know my dad mentioned about Buddy Holly, and then I think it's Buddy Rich every now and again. That's their deal. All right, I'll give it a chat. I'll give it a listen. See what's going on. Okay. Was there anything else, or
No, I think that's it, man. I mean, I could turn this into a whole other interview to where we could cut off right here, and then I could post me interviewing you for my podcast, but we won't.
is that not yet? Yes, we do have one more question, and we always have to have a nice little conclusion afterwards. But I just wanted to make sure. Was there anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So for the last question right here, here's how it goes. So given what COVID has done, obviously, I know you mentioned you lost some family there along the way, but it seemed like it was kind of a blessing in disguise in terms of your music and being able to release more of entropy, emotion, that sort of deal. So for those musicians and people who've been impacted by COVID or anything else in their lives, whether it was addiction or anything else, what's their message of hope can you give to those people as we try to move forward in a post-COVID world?
Well, I think the biggest one is you lived to tell a story. They experienced it in their own way. It affected them in their own way, in a way that's individual to them, but also in a way that could really reach other people. And whether you directly talk about it or somehow it influences the music that you put out, or even just the fact that, like I said earlier, you wake up and you realize, hey, I'm still here. After all this, I'm still here. I'm going to do what I do. Like, let that all be your message. Like, the crux of it is you're still here to do what you do. So do it.
So do it. That's our deal, yeah. I should hold Nike
Yep.
brand there. Just do it. So yeah. Right.
With a swoosh on there. There you go.
Swish. And spoken like a true prodigy. So, right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So, Andres, we reached my podcast right here. We're just a little under an hour and 30 minutes right now, but might be a little short because I know we started a little bit later. But got any final words? Any shots you want to get before we close?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity being on here. Really enjoy listening to your podcast. So to be on here has been a great honor for me. Humbling. Just really appreciate the fact that you took the time to not only interview me now, but to listen to the music to kind of see what I'm about. Just very grateful for that, and just continue to do what you do. And I'm just really, I could shout out pretty much anybody and everybody, but I'm going to shout you out and just say, keep doing what you're doing, man. In all your ventures, just really thankful for what you're doing for the indie community. I know it takes time and energy and everything else, and it can be draining sometimes. But just going to shout you out, man. Say, keep going. Do what you do.
Thank you, mate. All right, real quick, who took the picture for you? I guess it's you without the sunglasses on right there, too.
The what?
There was a little picture right here on Facebook. Yeah, I guess it's under Messenger here. Yeah, it shows you like this without your sunglasses on. I guess who took that picture?
I don't know. Is it the black and white one?
That's the black and white one, yeah.
Oh, that was me.
Nice little selfie action. Little deal.
Yeah. I try to take them every once in a while, and the only reason I wear my glasses all the time is I just feel more comfortable with them. They're prescription glasses, so I just feel more comfortable. They're a lot better than wearing contact lenses. And I do have clear lenses, but they got all scratched up, and these are like very durable. Don't remember how I ended up having clear lenses and dark lenses for the same frame of Ray-Bans. I got Ray-Ban prescription, but I just threw these on and I just said, I'm gonna I'm trying to think of the person. I'm gonna Ray Charles my way through life, so.
Hopefully they don't get the wrong impression that you're blind. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no.
Just real quick, just for the audience, can you just list what social media and streaming platforms you're on so they can check you out?
I'm on all streaming platforms pretty much that you listen to, so feel free to listen to me anywhere. Entropy in Motion. Social media, you could find me at Entropy in Motion Music on Instagram and Facebook. Those are the biggest ones. And I also have a side project that you can listen to on all social media platforms as well, called Cisanya, which is stylized as CZNA with a little tilde over the N. That's more instrumental kind of stuff that I just wanted to learn how to be a better producer. So really what that project is about is really short songs where there's very little of my instrumentation on it. Most of it is me working with samples. That's just because I wanted to learn another facet of it. So yeah, check that out if you're so inclined.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much for sharing that too. I had no idea about that. So, all right. But the close out like this. Everyone, my guest today was Andres Herrera. He's hailed from the lovely state of Colorado right there, aka Entropy in Motion. I guess, what was the other group called?
Cisanya, CZNA with the tilde over the N.
Cisanya, okay. So make sure you go hit him up on his socials. Go see his music on all streaming platforms. Give the guy a listen right here. Go help our brother out there too. So, Andres, again, so much again for coming on your mate. I'm happy I was able to make a dream come true right here too. So, you stay safe because it is a crazy world out there. Rock on. Stay tuned,
You
y'all.
too, my brother. Spasiba, das vidanya.
Adios.